We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hassani.
I'm Lakeisha.
I'm Jewel. And this is Jeff.
I think maybe. I don't know if that's a ghost or if that's really him, but we're all here. This is the Couples Academy Practitioners team, and we're here for another great week. This weekend was a last chance weekend, and boy, oh boy, was it amazing. We had couples who flew in and drove in. We're going to unpack that a little bit later. But what a time we had. I just want to make a quick announcement. There's one more left to go. That's right, one more before the end of the year, and people are starting to register, which I'm really excited about. And so if you're questioning, when is this thing? We keep hearing about this thing. Well, it is going to be on December the 9th through the 11th. If you haven't made that decision yet, it's not too late. You need to dive right in because it's going to be transformational. If you want to know what it's about, take a look at this. And on the other side of this, we'll get started with today's show. That's right. That's the last chance weekend. That is our opportunity to really make an impact in the lives of other couples. You know, today's topic is an important topic because we kind of dealt with that this weekend. And, you know, obviously there's betrayal, infidelity, and that's the primary reason why people come to experience the last chance weekend. And, you know, it lands differently based upon the circumstances of the affair. And there's no perfect scenario to be unfaithful. It's all bad. It all hurts. But there's this term called death by 1,000 cuts. And based upon the nature of the relationship, it can be more hurtful and impactful. And what we have found is that just throughout the course of us working in this space for the last 10 years, a lot of times these affairs are not with people that you work with, not people that you serve in ministry, not somebody that you went to a conference and you were at the bar and you met someone and things just went in a direction that you weren't anticipating it. But sometimes they are with people that you've had a previous interaction, relationship with. And in this case, we're talking about the ex, whether it be the ex-spouse, the ex-lover, whatever the case may be. And so I think it's important that we have a conversation today where we talk about unhealthy boundaries with an ex. Now, interestingly enough, if there are no legal ties, financial ties, or if there's no offspring, there's no reason for a relationship with the ex, period, point blank. There's a reason why it came to an end. But what if you do have children? What if there's a past? What if there's something that links and binds you two together? Well, That's why it's critically important to establish proper boundaries in your existing relationship so that past relationship does not create a problem. So that's what we're talking about today. Unhealthy boundaries with an ex, because it is an issue that keeps arising, and it seems like couples are not in alignment about how to begin to move things forward. So Jewel, I want you to start this conversation off with us today in terms of, the importance of these boundaries, and what is your take on this whole situation in general?
Wow, Sonny, this topic is really important because a lot of couples do face this situation, and unfortunately, it could be a situation that really causes a lot of issues unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is very important that if you are entering into a relationship where you have children with someone else, whether it's from an ex-wife or an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend, whatever the situation may be, that those boundaries are set before or during the beginning of your new relationship. Waiting until something happens is just going to cause a lot of chaos. And unfortunately, people use their children as pawns in order to control that person's household, control them, upset the current wife, girlfriend, whatever the situation may be. And those are the things that you don't want to start a relationship with. You want to be able to be at peace with everyone. You want the children to know that there's some form of stability that's going to be able to be for them in both households. It's something that definitely has to be communicated with in the beginning, and that's with all parties. But first and foremost, that spouse and that husband and wife, they need to set those ground rules that's acceptable for their household, and then relay it to the other household.
Lakeisha, just because a person is a part of your past doesn't mean that they're in your past. There are many people who still remain present, obviously, for the sake of the children, but we don't necessarily know the circumstances of the termination of that relationship. Maybe, who knows? Maybe there's still attachments. Maybe there's no closure, whatever the case may be. How do you talk to a couple? Because I know you counsel a lot of couples, and this issue does come up, and it creates a strain on the relationship. What are the proper conversations that need to be had, or rules that need to be established moving forward, so that those children don't become the excuse or the alibi, if you will, that so many people use?
It's so funny that you said what you said, because I was literally sitting here thinking that, sometimes people, they're friends before they ever into a romantic relationship, right? They were friends before. Like, honestly, that's what happened with my husband and I. We were straight up friends. We've known each other since elementary school, elementary, middle, and high school. We were nothing but friends. And then eventually, obviously, it transitioned into something else. So if you started off just being friends, just because the romantic side of the relationship didn't work out, you may still want to maintain a friendship. And that's okay if you're able to set proper boundaries for when the other person does decide to move on to another relationship. So some of the main things you have to do with obviously setting boundaries is, you have to make sure that your new partner is okay with that relationship. You got to make sure that they're okay with it. And how do you determine if they're okay? Well, you have to talk. You have to have a conversation. For me in my house, there are no exes. Like, there's no reason for us to still be communicating. That's my house. But for you in your house, you do what you want to do. But I'm saying you have to have a conversation with your new partner and make sure they're okay. So if they're okay with it, then you can proceed. So that looks like you can't call here after certain times of night. So you got to have certain times in place where we're off limits to you. All of us are off limits. And also, if me and my ex are going to be friends, we're all friends. It's not just the two of you still having a friendship. No, all three of us are going to be friends. So that's something else. Making sure that you're not disrespecting the home, calling at all different times of hours or whatever. You're keeping me out of your relationship. I'm keeping you out of my relationship, meaning we're not discussing what marital problems we're having or relationship problems we're having, because that's going to bond us again emotionally. And if there are kids involved, you definitely have to make sure that, especially when it's an early breakup, you have to make sure that there's a designated drop-off spot. We're not meeting privately to exchange the children. No, we're going to have a designated spot where there are other people around for us to be able to exchange these children. We're not meeting up we're just not meeting up alone. I'm not coming to your house. You're not coming to my house unless my significant other is there. And even if you do come, there's no reason for you to come in the house. We can meet you right at the door with the babies and you go on and do what you need to do. So I want to give other people an opportunity to speak, but you definitely have to make sure, again, that there are set boundaries and there are rules that are in place. Otherwise, it's easy to fall back into that love relationship because there's history there. So you have to make sure that you put those bumpers, just like when you go bowling, you make sure that you have the bumpers up to make sure that you're not veering too far from the left or right.
You make a good point. If you're going to be friends with an ex, is your spouse on board? It reminds me of a couple that I know from a previous church that I belonged to. And, the wife was formerly married and they had children. And so she got remarried and, the ex and his family are in close relationship with her and her husband, and they have an awesome relationship. It's a healthy relationship. They have a child. And so, what works for one couple may not work for another based upon the circumstances of the breakup, based upon the relational dynamics of the previous relationship. Like all these things are factored in. So, these are general principles that we're talking about, and how it applies to your relationship may be different based upon a number of different factors. But Jeff, I want to bring you in because it seems as though one person in the relationship in many cases will justify and rationalize why there should still be a tie, not just concerning the children, but just a relational tie in general. And the other person is absolutely adamantly against it, and it causes a rift. What are your thoughts on this?
So I'm very, very old fashioned in some regards. And I think a lot of the modern things that we try may be for good benefit, but some of them are not. And so for me, when I took the vow, forsaking all others, I meant it. I didn't just say that because that's what people say traditionally in a marriage. And unfortunately, I didn't mean it the first 10 years of my marriage. But when I recommitted to make that a real thing, I had to really take a look. And forsaking all others meant literally getting rid of everyone. And that was partially because of how irresponsible I know I was. Right? Now, I do think that there's room for the communication if it's done by responsible adults. So, for instance, if my wife were to go out and hang out and go shopping with one of my exes because they made it out to be good friends and they spent more time together than I spent with them and just happened to know each other because we went to the same church, same works, whatever, that makes sense to me because that's cohesive, right? It's not being forced together. It's happening naturally. But if there is any opportunity to destroy my relationship with someone that I've committed to be with for the rest of my life because of another person interacting with them, nothing will come between me and my wife. It will be everything else forsaken for the sake of my relationship with my immediate family. Every other relationship does not matter more than that.
There it is. So that's your primary relationship, and everything else should not compromise the integrity of that. Guys, we're talking about creating boundaries with an ex in order to protect the existing marriage. Listen, you're watching the Couples Academy show. There's a lot of comments in the chat that we'll get to on the other side of this break. Stay right with us.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
when 45 men from all walks of life come together in one place for one purpose. There is a collective harmony that produces an amplification of power that leaves an impact on the lives of men that cannot be erased. A fraternity of legendary men, all at the tipping point, on the precipice of greatness, meeting for one weekend to turn their worlds inside out. For the first time ever, the Foundry experience. Not an event, not a seminar or retreat, but an opportunity to come face to face with the man you were always destined to be. If you want a life that's better than the one that you are living, meet us January 2023 for the Foundry experience. Hey guys, you're watching the Couples Academy show. We're talking about these unhealthy boundaries and how we need to create healthy boundaries when dealing with an ex. Jeff, aren't you excited? Listen, the Foundry experience is just a couple of months away. We're almost at that point. Literally, I think there's 5 slots left. Are you excited about what these men are about to experience?
I don't think they know what they're in for. And I mean that in a good way. It's like I really think what we started with was a good event. And what we're building to is something spectacular that's going to be life-changing.
It is. It's going to be transformational. So if you have not registered yet, it is not too late. Get your spot. It's going to be just the perfect way to start the year off. I know that the women had a great time, but it's going to be nothing in comparison to what we're about to do.
No, definitely not. We got you, girls. I'm sorry. We're just going to have to do it.
All right, guys, we're talking about unhealthy boundaries in your relationships. I want to hit a few of these signs that I think really become problematic. So number one, when dealing with an ex, if there is incessant daily phone calls, like what are we talking about every day? Are we talking about the child every day? First of all, your child is grown. Your child is 35 years old. What are we talking for? And even if the child is 8 or 12 or whatever the case may be, it doesn't require daily interaction. And oftentimes we see that this is nothing more than a cover because there's this relational tie, this emotional connection that we haven't let go yet. And we're using the child as an excuse to get on the phone. And interestingly enough, when these phone calls happen, isn't it interesting that the spouse is never around? They just happen to be driving in the car. They just happen to be in the garage. They just happen to be, at work when all these conversations are happening. And it's a shock and it's a surprise to the spouse when they find out all of the daily interactions.
Listen, let me tell you, in this world of technology, we don't ever have to have a live conversation. There's text messages, there's emails, there's Marco Polo. Like there's so much you can do where we never, ever have to have a live conversation. Kids literally have teachers. If they're in daycare, they have a daycare provider where you can reach out to the school because I've done this. You don't need to call me. You can literally contact the teacher and you can find out what is going on with your child. You have access. You're on the list. They can talk to you about whatever you want to know. And I will update you with the things that are going on in the home. But everything else that you need to know about their education and all of that, they have teachers. Talk to them.
Absolutely. Jewel, what about when these individuals show up at each other's homes unannounced?
Not. Absolutely. Exactly. No, that is my home. That is our safe haven, whatever the situation may be. If you're not invited, don't come to my house. And if you need to come to my house, you need to call first. If there's something wrong with the children, then you can reach out. But just popping up just because, and unfortunately, some people allow that. And then the ex feels as though that they have just as right to your home as they have to their own home. It's not acceptable. Now, unless you and your spouse say it's okay, then that's a different story. I would never say that it should be okay. But if both of you guys are okay with her or him just popping up, fine, so be it. If not, it's not happening. It should not happen.
But then this whole idea of making last minute changes to the custody schedule, this really can cause a rift between a husband and a wife because listen, we had plans. How in the world are they going to change at the last minute? Listen, let me tell you something. I've seen the arguments and the fights and the stress on a relationship, particularly like during holidays or special moments and things of that nature. And all of a sudden you want to switch up and change plans because you had another idea. It really has a negative impact. And these are boundaries, right? The schedule is a boundary. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Well, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that people do in their power games that they play with each other is they don't realize the damage that they're inflicting on their children. Because these children are learning from us. They're learning how to interact from us. And when they see us act childish and immature and do things at the last minute and try to cause rifts in situations, they're taking all of that in as guidance, and you're destroying the next generation for someone else to clean up.
Very
Hasani,
good.
oh, I'm sorry. But on the flip side of that, what happens is, okay, even if you have a schedule and I have the children one week, the next week you have the children and you change that schedule, we're not changing. If you change the time that I'm supposed to have my kids and all of a sudden you want to take them somewhere that following weekend, it's still your weekend, you're going to have those children. But see, what happens is, unfortunately, the parent doesn't communicate with the child. Only thing the child sees is, okay, this is the weekend I'm supposed to be with my dad, and I'm not going to my dad's for whatever the reason may or may not be. So now the child is looking like, well, dad had other plans and he didn't want to come get me, or mom didn't want to come get me, or whatever the situation may be. So parents don't think about how the children are perceiving all this mix up and these changes, because all they're seeing is that the person that they're supposed to see, they're not seeing.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Here's another one: dictating what or how your involvement with your stepkids look. Now, I want to pause here for a second because we're talking about, well, hey, if your spouse is open to the relationship, so be it. But the truth is, the reality is, a lot of times, not all the time, a lot of times the ex doesn't want to have anything to do with your spouse. They don't like them. They don't want them around the child. They don't like how they raise them. They're very opinionated. They want to influence and dictate what happens in that home. Like, it's a real situation. And a lot of times a spouse is playing a tug of war between the ex-partner and the spouse as it relates to the child, as it relates to the interaction. I mean, for a lot of people, it's a big mess. Lakeisha, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it is a mess. You're absolutely right. And in the middle of that mess, like Jules said, are the children, and the adults really have to be the ones to be the adults. But yes, it creates this huge rift when everyone is not in alignment and not on the same page. And I have had clients where it's like, look, what you do in your house is what you do. What I do in my house is what I do. So that's one way of handling it, especially if you guys are not in agreement. That could have been one of the reasons why you broke up in the first place, is because you could not be in agreement or in alignment with your parenting styles. So what you do in your house, that's fine. And what I do over here is fine. But if you are able to come to a consensus and you can be in agreement, then the ideal situation, which is the best for the children, is for whatever you say is not permissible or allowable in this home is not permissible or allowable in that home. Because then that way the kids understand that I can't go over here and just do whatever I want to do and it's all loosey goosey and there are no rules, but then it's structured over here. You're going to have conflict. There's going to be resentment that will set in with the parent who has the boundaries, and the one that's all loose. Oh, they're the fun parent, they're the best parent. So you're going to create confusion and all this just lack of, again, cohesiveness and agreement. And there's all this confusion that sits in. And like I said, sometimes it's bitterness and resentment with the children too, because they have to be all disciplined and structured over here, but then free over there. But the one thing I do know It's when it comes to relationships, and you guys are dealing with different personalities. You have the pleasers and you have the breakers. You have the pleasers who are taking way too much responsibility for what happened, and then you have the breaker who takes zero responsibility for what happened. So you got this one parent, the breaker's blaming the pleaser for everything. You're the reason why this is broken down and this is going wrong. And instead of taking their own responsibility, and then you in turn make the kids do that. So the more agreement we're in, the more alignment we can have, is better for us, reduces our stress. We're not arguing, we're not fighting, and it creates a more warm and nurturing and loving and a safe, healthy environment for our kids, which ultimately that's what's most important. And to your point, Asana, if we don't have no kids, really, what are we talking about?
For real though. LaShawn says, you're speaking to me. I would tell my husband all the time, being friends with exes is not healthy. There's exes for a reason. He still keeps in communication with most of his exes since our separation. He and his ex-wife have been hanging out a lot. He even had me take out one of his old fiance or flames with us and called it an act of kindness. Are you serious? Like, this is the insanity. So you went out with him and an ex, and it was an act of kindness. I tell you, this is why Couples Academy exists, because of the crazy. There's another comment in here. I find that my husband kept in contact with his ex through Facebook Messenger often and claimed that their relationship is like siblings, now because they dated when they were really young, over 25 years ago. Let me tell you something. Siblings, right? So then what he's involved in is emotional incest, okay? Because when you have a past partner that you have been intimate with, listen, that's a history. It may be in your history, but it's a part of your relationship. And to just flip a switch and go from being sexual to a sibling, no, something's wrong. It's an excuse. And at the end of the day, when we talk about these 19 signs of a close call friendship, one of the signs is if there's a friend of the opposite sex in your life that's a point of contention, and we keep struggling with this particular friend, that friend has to go. It is poison and a detriment to the relationship. What are we still talking about? So at some point, you're willing to hold on to this friend if it literally destroys the foundation of our relationship. It lets me know where your heart and your mind really is. These are the challenges that we're dealing with when dealing with this topic. Listen, guys, you're watching the Couples Academy show. We're going to go to a quick break. Stay right there. There's a couple more comments and a couple more points we're going to hit on the other side of this break. Stay right there. Yeah, we're talking about these unhealthy signs with these exes. The last one we're going to hit before we wrap up is this whole idea where literally they're talking about their personal lives. Like, wait a minute. So it's beyond the scope of the children and drop off and pickup times and, medical bills and appointments that need to be scheduled for our child. Now we're talking about life. Now we're engaging in a form of intimacy because I'm allowing you into my everyday. This is problematic, and emotional ties form. And as a result of that, it really compromises what you have going on in your relationship. At the end of the day, that time spent, that energy spent, those emotions shared are supposed to be for those in the confines of your covenant relationship. And when you start doing that with other people, it's problematic. So guys, if this is your situation, you need to reach out to us because we can guide you through a process to get you back into alignment. It's simply some course corrections. It's simply, I think Jules said, or Lakeisha, I'm not sure, putting, when you're bowling, you put these borders up on either side to prevent the balls from going, down. What are those things called when you're going bowling? You put the there it is. Whatever. Going down the gutter. Don't let your marriage. The bumpers, thank you. Don't let your marriage go down the gutter. Put these bumpers up and prevent the inevitable from happening. So as we wrap up, I want to get last comments, last thoughts on what we should walk away with, because there's many people listening right now, Lakeisha, who are in this same exact situation. They've been crying out for help. Their spouse is not listening. They've minimized this. It's no big deal. We're just friends. Stop being insecure. What advice would you have for them?
Absolutely. And Melody said, what if the spouse's ex and their daughter come before the wife and the child is grown, 32 years old? That's exactly what you were just talking about, Hassan, and they're adults. So my final thought for you guys is never make a person choose between their new chapter and their children. Never make them choose, because the reality is this, just like Jeff said, when I make a vow, when I get married and I say I do, when I walk down the aisle, it is a 3-strand cord. It's me, God, and my spouse, right? And the order of things literally is God, spouse, children. That leaves no, X is not even up in there nowhere. So never make a person choose between their new chapter and their children. It's always going to be their new relationship or their new spouse, and it's going to be then the children. So everything we do needs to be with putting those kids first. And if you're married, putting your spouse first and honoring and respecting your new relationship.
Joel.
At the end of the day, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for the marriage. We say it all the time. Is if there is a situation that is not working for the wife or the husband, then it doesn't work. It truly is not going to work. And communication is definitely the key. And those boundaries are so important. You have to have boundaries, period.
Jeff, final thoughts.
I think basically a government needs to be established. Somebody needs to sit down. I mean, all parties involved. Like if there's a child involved, there needs to be all parties involved sitting down, deciding on some guidelines, and possibly bringing in a mediator to make sure it works. And really, my final thoughts are: everyone thinks they can just cut off an old relationship and move on to the next one. I want you to think about all the problems, the unforeseen problems that come when you have a new marriage and another new marriage or multiple children. Really, spend the time working on your marriage and making sure that it actually works, as opposed to just giving up. I want to put that message out there, because all of these situations are created because somebody didn't try one more time. Someone wasn't willing to commit to doing a little more work to make sure something worked.
Well, there it is, guys. Unhealthy boundaries with the ex. Let's turn those unhealthy boundaries into healthy boundaries and do what's right for the integrity of the primary relationship, which is you and your spouse. Because at the end of the day, when those kids get older and they leave your home, it's just the two of you. Right. And so many people's relationships have just disintegrated over time because they've allowed all of these issues creep in that have gone unresolved. And then once the kids are gone, there's nothing else binding us together. So we might as well go too. And that does not have to be your reality. That's why you need to continue to tune into the Couples Academy show. And if you need help, reach out to us. Simply go to the website, couplesacademy.org, or reach out at 678-200-8996. But until then, see you tomorrow for another great episode of our show. Love you guys. Take care.